Hello and welcome to From the Be All End, the Burnley podcast. This is the debrief for Sheffield Wednesday 0, Burnley 2, a result that saw the Clarets climb momentarily to the top of the Championship table. As we record this on Sunday night, we're back down in second because Sunderland won at Hull City, which of course is where the Clarets visit midweek. We will come on to that a little bit later. But I'm Andrew Greaves, alongside me Simon Evans, Chris Borden and Paul Woodhouse. Start with you, Simon. Good to see us get a win, and one that felt a bit more convincing, certainly based on that second half performance, given the real criticism, I guess, has been of the style of football and the performance, hasn't it? But a win is a win, and signs in that second half that things are starting to tick, perhaps?
Yeah, it did feel the second half that there was a clicking process happening. You know, that we've been saying that for a while, haven't we, that it will click. And there were signs of that. I thought Scott Parker deserves a lot of credit for the team selections he made for that game, because I think pretty much all of them worked. I thought Josh Laurent had an excellent game playing in the midfield alongside Cullen, really going forward a little bit more. That freed up Josh Brownhill to do what, as we've said many times, he does at the best at this level, which is get forward and get into some positions. He left out Perez for Humphrey at left back, which, seems a logical one. And, we're starting to have those options, aren't we, where we've got an attacking left back who's a wing back, who's quite good going forward, or at least promising going forward, and looks a little bit shaky at times defensively. Well, we can play him at home where we're up against a team who are defending. Away from home, he obviously thought we needed a more orthodox left back, and Humphrey didn't put a foot wrong, really, I didn't think, at left back. Might have been one or two little things, but I thought he was pretty solid. And then up front, he went with Fleming in place of the injured Lyle Foster, ignoring the pleas from the pod squad that he bring in Andreas Huntunji into that position. And Fleming, I keep hearing people say false nine just because he's played at number 10. He played like a 9. He played as a 9. There was nothing false about it. He was a target man. He was holding up the ball well. He was pressurising the defenders. He was a constant presence, which is the criticism we've made, or I've made anyway, of Lyle Foster, is that he's not that constant presence in the middle. There was always somebody there. There was always an option for a ball in. So I thought the first half was a little bit too similar to the last couple of home games. Wasn't quite enough urgency and pressure being applied in the final third, but that changed in the second half. Once we got a goal under our belt, we looked a lot more comfortable. And in the end, a convincing 2-0 win.
Yeah, and Woody, we've mentioned Brownhill a few times, haven't we? And it's that kind of conundrum of how can we get him further forward. I mean, I think it's 5 goals and 1 assist from 10 games from the captain. That kind of the finish from him this time was exactly from the position you want to see him in, kind of sweeping up little, loose balls on the edge of the area and kind of going for it. And it's like Simon said, the team selection, I think when it came out, people were kind of going, oh, he's dropped Hannibal or he's dropped Perez. Like, what's the thinking? But he's learning about these players more and more. The more time he spends with these lads, he's learning about them, isn't he? And do you get a sense that he's kind of not necessarily settling on his best 11, because I think he was really clear that it'd be different teams for different oppositions. But do you feel like he's got a bit more confidence in the players he wants for his system?
I think it was interesting what he said in his post-match interview, how he said that he thought he got some things maybe a little bit wrong with Preston North End. And so he tweaked, obviously, yesterday for Sheffield Wednesday. And I think the second goal was a great example of how bringing in Fleming and how more comfortable they got with the middle three Joshers. That kind of feint dummy from Brownhill to let the ball run, and then the strength of Fleming, who understood that ball was like, something to run onto, shrugged him off, and then Brownhill still carrying on that run and finishing it off, showed there was a little bit of an understanding going on. And you kind of saw that a lot in the second half. You saw kind of Roberts tucking in a little bit to cover Laurent, pushing a little bit forward. You had Cole Yoshio, as he was mentioned more often than once on the TV over here, like sticking to the touchline out wide, giving us a lot of room for Laurent to like push into, or maybe Fleming to make runs across. And there was a lot of clever movement and a lot of clever little passes yesterday. And they seemed to understand each other a lot better as to what was going on. It wasn't perfect by any stretch, like we're saying, but you could see things working, little patterns of play and more understanding. And, you know, the little Spider-Man routine after they scored the second, I think was kind of indicative of that. And they seemed to also enjoy playing yesterday, which was also quite nice. But I think it was an improvement, and I think you can tell that, you know, Scott Parker had done his own work, done the right tweaks, like Simon said, and it worked, didn't it?
Yeah, and Chris, an admission from the boss that he perhaps got certain things against Preston North End wrong, and without being kind of too critical of our former manager, we never really heard a Vincent Kompany admission of him getting something wrong, did we? And it just feels a bit like that kind of Parker's come in as this kind of slight breath of fresh air based on obviously last season. And I think he's a bit of a reformed character, isn't he, Parker? I think he probably in his previous roles has learnt a lot from the way he's conducted himself, and I'm not saying a bit more humility, if you will, but it's kind of quite refreshing, isn't it, to go, you know what, actually against PNE, we were probably a little bit short, and that's some of it's down to me, but he has that bravery to then, you know, drop someone like Hannibal, drop Pires, who most people, you know, will agree hasn't really done very much wrong. It's different. It is different teams for different opposition, isn't it? And that seems to work.
Yeah, it's the modern game, isn't it? I think you can sort of talk about horses for courses, and you might go against that every now and again if you've got a winning side and you want to, you know, stick with that for familiarity and momentum. That side of things. He's not daft, is he? Let's have it right. You know, I keep saying in an exemplary career. You know, very very clever, very technically gifted and hardworking footballer at an elite level. He's had a couple of promotions. He's had a couple of tough times at Fulham and Bournemouth that led to him leaving those situations. And in Belgium, he walked in, into the fire there as such in 12 games. A bit of a sticky situation, and he's had time to go away and rethink really, and sort of assess, you know, what his next move's going to be. What, you know, how he's going to attack that. It is refreshing. There's a humility, as you say. There's no mask. There's no facade. I think he's quite straight, to be honest. And, you know, we've had that in the past, and we've got that again. But yeah, he's making sensible calls, and yeah, I think everyone looked at the side. We'd all been calling for, you know, if you're going to have that sort of midfielder that's going to play off the front, it has to be Brownhill. And again, he's shown again. You know, 5 goals. He guarantees you 5 goals a season at Championship level. We've said before, but now he's got to be looking for double figures, and we need a forward to, you know, who can join him in that pursuit. You know, I was on Radio Lancashire on Friday night, and Alex Neil was in the studio, and we were sort of talking about who would come in, and, you know, as we said on the podcast about, you know, hoping to see Hutonji get a shot, and you know, he's gone with Fleming. Like Alex Neil was sort of saying, are you going to have someone like Fleming who wants to come to the ball, or J-Rod who wants to come to the ball? Do you want someone like Hutonji's more likely to run in behind like Foster? But if you see with the second goal, you know, Fleming's not scared to drive at a back four either, and you know, get to the heart of the defence. And Brownhill, as good players do, followed that situation in, and he's finished it off. You know, a bit of fortune. It's been deflected into the corner of the goal in the end, but he's on the spot, and that's the area he hits. That's where you get older fans, that Brian Robson position where he'd break into the box late and the Lampards and get there late. Not suggesting he's anywhere near that caliber. He's absolutely
I know what you
country
mean,
mile
though,
away. But the players who get into that area and they get the rewards as a result of it. And we've seen Josh Brownhill can finish, and like I say, he's got to be doubling that at least now. He sort of fell away in terms of goals 2 years ago after a bright start, but I expect him to continue this.
Yeah, and Simon, I mean, I think it's now 4 clean sheets on the bounce. It's still a bit of a makeshift kind of back four. Not makeshift as such, but inexperienced, let's say. Not makeshift, use the wrong word there. But, Egan Riley looks to be growing into it. There's 1 or 2 kind of air and scare moments. Like you say, Humphreys didn't really do much wrong. Really kind of Roberts is the most experienced of that back 4, back 5, if you include in Trafford. But there's something to be said for kind of, Egan Riley getting that chance and building into, becoming a really kind of solid option alongside our mate Steve.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And I think, it's amazing what a run of games will do for a player, isn't it, really? Because, again, like we were saying about Hutonji, what were we judging Egan Riley off? Company brought him in and never really gave him a chance. He was loaned out here, there and everywhere. We, playing in Scotland where we weren't watching him. I'm sure the club were, somebody, you hope, but we didn't know what he was capable of. And so when he comes in, you sort of think of him automatically then as a sort of Kevin Long type player who's been around the squad for a couple of years. And if we're really short, he'll get thrust into action and you just hope he doesn't make a mistake. And he's far better than that. He's shown that. He's not got a great deal of pace, has he? But he looks very comfortable on the ball and he's getting in the right positions defensively. And it seems like that sort of calmness that Steve sort of exudes and that people really like about him, his sort of composure as a defender, being able to read it really well, seems to be rubbing off on Egan Riley as well, because he seems to be playing with that calmness. And that's what you want more than anything at the centre of defence. Don't want to be seeing people making spectacular last-ditch tackles. We're not doing that because we're reading it really well. So that side of the team's been fine for quite a while now, hasn't it? We look solid enough at the back. The question, still, have we got quite enough creativity there? Are we going to score good goals against better teams than Sheffield Wednesday? That's still the area that you want to see more happening. But again, Fleming, he just looks to me like a player that, to address what Chris was saying there about can he run in behind as well as he looks like he can do a lot of things, doesn't he, Fleming? Yeah. He looks like a good footballer to me. And, and he's come out of Ajax's academy, I believe, where he won't have just learnt to play one position there, And so he can do a lot. The team looks better every time he's been on the field for us, whether it was Leeds or yesterday or other games when he's come off the bench. The team looks better with him in it. And if we haven't got the centre-forward option, he is the centre-forward. And we'll see what he can do later on if we sign another centre-forward or if Foster comes back and gets going properly. Maybe we'll see him in that position that he played for Millwall. But for the time being, I'm perfectly content to see Zion Fleming playing as number 9 with 2 wingers off him. And, in the second half, noticeably, those 2 wingers got a little bit more narrow, didn't they? They started playing closer to him, and that did make it more effective. Because I think sometimes, I saw this recently in another game I was at covering the US national team, where Pulisic, who plays in that same sort of position as Anthony out on the left, Pochettino was saying to him, go and play inside left. It's what used to be called in like 1950s and 60s inside left. And they were far more effective with the central striker when those wingers are playing there. I don't think you can play 2 touchline wingers and 1 guy in the middle very effectively. I think they've got to work closer together, and you could see that yesterday. Yeah,
and Woody, we're obviously a bit off the January transfer window, but I'm going to throw a name at you as a possible contender. I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Wout Weghorst, I think he's called.
Oh, big Wout.
Scored 2 today for Ajax, including the winner from the penalty spot. They won 4-3 at... I can't even pronounce Heracles, I think they're called. I've got lost who they were playing, but yeah, they were Wout Weghorst, scoring goals. Obafemi scoring goals. We kind of, we've had strikers, haven't we? And it's kind of been a bit of a problem spot for a while, hasn't it? Kind of, and we know good strikers are hard to come by, and 20-goal strikers are going to cost you the earth. But if we can get more goals from elsewhere, like we're seeing with Brownhill, 5 and an assist from Brownhill already in 10 games, it takes a bit of that pressure off, doesn't it? But at the minute, we're probably not scoring enough, are we? You probably need to score, 70 goals plus to be automatically promoted, something like that, you'd expect?
Yeah, I think if you look at how we started off, we've only conceded 4 goals.
Correct,
Goals for 16 granted, 9 of those in our first 2 games or whatever. Unbeaten in 7 and 6 consecutive clean sheets, and you can tell by the way Scott Parker wants to play that he wants to kind of play with just that one guy up front. He's not going to play necessarily with 2, is he? And Fulham and at Bournemouth, he didn't play with 2 up front. And so he likes this idea of people running off this focal guy up front, which Fleming, I think, is an exceptional example of, and a very, very clever footballer. So I like to see how this side that we saw yesterday develops and see how we score more goals with this setup, because I think as it clicks and as it develops, I think we will get more goals out of this side, but it might not necessarily be from your front man, but I think there's goals in him, definitely.
Yeah. And Chris, before we move on to have a look at the whole game, we got a tweet a little bit earlier today from Andrew Connor, Red Sox Clarets on Twitter, said, interested to hear your thoughts on the very exuberant celebrations after the away wins. Have we won the league after 20 games? Now, a couple of people have jumped on and said, surprisingly, I enjoy them and see them as a connection with the fans, especially when we've often travelled a fair distance. I'm not seeing them as arrogance. Also looks like great team spirit. That's from Skipton Claret. And then Parker's Cardigan. Celebrating wins is exactly what we should be doing with fans. Any win, but especially vital away wins. Fans travel a long way, spend a lot of money, and they certainly did at Sheffield Wednesday. I think it was nearly 40 quid a ticket for an adult's ticket. Let them enjoy it with the players who also train hard all week to send them home with the 3 points. Where do you stand on the kind of exuberant or kind of over-the-top celebrations? Or, it's pretty harmless, isn't it?
Well, as we were saying before we came on, it's not something that happened years ago, but the sort of expectation and scrutiny that they're under wasn't there as well, I don't think. And, if you don't win a game, it's a mini crisis these days. I don't have an issue with it. I mean, if they're expected to just shake hands, go off the park and have a pint of milk and a cigarette, then fine, like in the 60s. But it's I suppose it's this sort of thing sort of started with Klopp. I remember him. They draw 2 apiece against West Brom at Anfield quite early in his reign, and they all stood in the line and bowed in front of the Kop sort of thing. But that built a connection, as we've said, and I've no issue with that. As you say, the fans aren't just final whistle goes, let's shake hands with who you stood next to and go home. They want to enjoy winning away from home's magic, and winning full stop on the back of last year is absolutely fantastic. They've spent a fortune to get there, the travel, the beers, etc. And I think it's a nice little connection. I don't have an issue. The celebration police seem to be on the case for anything like this these days, but I have absolutely no issue with it. Enjoy every win with your teammates, with your supporters. There's a great bond. We've spoken about. I think it was the Portsmouth game that went to the wire, and the connection, the spirit in the squad, the Spider-Man celebration between the Joshes. I love that. I absolutely love it. Josh Laurent's been here for 2 minutes, and he's bought into everything. The squad and the club is about, to my eyes, certainly. He's on social media. He seems to be engaging really well with supporters, and long may it continue. I've no qualms with it at all.
Yeah, I'd be worried if we were celebrating like that after like a draw away to another Lancashire team or something like that. That'd be concerning. But if you actually win the game, I think you're entitled to celebrate. I think it is a good sign, and yeah, it's modern football, isn't it? We didn't used to do things like that, but as Chris said, the pressure that they're under now, and every game's televised. They haven't had those home games probably didn't feel that good. There were a few murmurs going around the ground by all accounts, and some booing even at one stage. So to go away, have a good performance, win 2-0, celebrate with those fans, they feel good. They're going back home on the bus, everyone's happy, and it's good. And it also shows that they care, don't they? Because last year, one of the things we did worry about with that team of companies was that they'd come casually strolling off the field after a defeat, and it didn't look like they were that bothered. They clearly, an away win at Sheffield Wednesday is still an achievement. And, it was funny, actually, while I was reading on Twitter, Alan Biggs, the journalist from that part of the world, and he was sort of praising, I think he's a Wednesday fan, and I think he was saying, that's just one of them you got to write off as you did your best, and you can't do much against a team that's just too good for you. And it didn't feel like that from our point of view, like we were just too good for Sheffield Wednesday. But that's the way teams, I think, Chris, you mentioned that in another game recently where, was it Plymouth where they were saying like, oh, we'll not play many teams like them, and we are viewed like that in this division. We are. And no, I'm happy to see them celebrate. Absolutely.
No, I was just saying that I think one of the other things is that we have a very good away support. We are brilliant. The noise that you could get off the TV yesterday was pretty much all Burnley fans. It was a morgue in Hillsborough apart from Burnley fans, and that level of support from obviously the players' point of view is worth celebrating. And I think, like everybody else has said, make that connection. And I think Scott Parker understands that is one of the primary focal points for this season. You've got to get the fans on side. You've got to get them behind you properly. And this helps. It may seem like slight over exuberance or whatever after what you might think was not the greatest 2-0 win, but it was still a very solid performance all told. And they were very, very good yesterday with Burnley fans. And I think they should applaud themselves as much as anything. And I've no problem if there's a bond forming between players and fans like that. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, definitely. 3,243 Burnley fans made the rather expensive trip to Sheffield yesterday, and it is something to celebrate. And I think that's, I'd agree. I don't think it's something that we need to be worried about. I don't think it's arrogance. I think there's just that little bit of, we're quite a young side. It's that little bit of kind of other stuff as well. Simon.
I was just thinking, if you go back to the last few days of the transfer window, the last week and a half of the transfer window, and you just said at the end of October, the main complaint of Burnley, or one of the complaints of Burnley fans, is that the team are celebrating their victories too much. I think we'd have taken it, wouldn't we? I mean, and it is, that team is starting to gel. They are starting to come together. There is a feeling there with the fans. That wasn't a given when half the team was walking out the door and players were requesting transfers. It wasn't a given at all. So huge credit to Parker for that, and to the fans, and to the players. Everyone's pulled together and got us into a position where we look like we've got a chance of getting promoted from this division from a situation of total chaos, really, 2 games into the season.
Far too much positivity on this week's podcast, I'm afraid. It's gonna that'll be the next complaint, kind of. We like it when Woody's pissed off, and we like it when Simon's miserable, and all this kind of thing. But let's look ahead now to Wednesday night. We travel to Hull on Wednesday night, so it's kind of, we're getting into that typical Championship kind of weekend midweek. Chris, they've been beaten on Sunday by Sunderland. We've leapfrogged us to go back to the top of the Championship. It's another tough game, isn't it? But again, a game which we should go into with some confidence on the back of this run of, X amount of games unbeaten, only conceding 4, X amount of clean sheets on the bounce. It's another chance for us to kind of put us mark on the Championship, isn't it?
Yeah, and I say that that record, the clean sheets, is it like sort of 6-7 hours or so without conceding a goal? it does prey on, the mentality of your opponents. You'll go into that game with that sort of aura about you. And again, it's Sunderland have set a marker, and Burnley will be thinking, we've got to go there and win there. But you've also got a home game against QPR, and I know it's not a given, certainly given what they achieved last time out at Turf Moor, when nobody would have given them a cat in hell's chance of getting a result, and they were only the only team to win at Turf Moor all season. It's one of those, isn't it? We are, as we said, going to Sheffield Wednesday. We should feel confident and capable of going anywhere and picking up the points. So it's keep things nice and solid, nice and secure, as we have been doing. And you hope. I say you're wondering, can we create? Can we score enough? Scored twice yesterday. Josh Brownhill's had an effort that gets deflected and could go absolutely anywhere. With great save from a free kick. Sarmiento has to score from the rebound. You could have had four or more in the end. So certainly confident of carving out chances. And when we do have chances, we are clinical with them. So more of the same.
And Simon, we've obviously been picking apart kind of Scott Parker's decisions to kind of pick a different team and rest some players. Would you? This might kind of go against everything we said, but would you stick with the same side who won at Sheffield Wednesday? Or, does it need a freshen up in certain areas? Is there any areas where you kind of think, well, actually, with a run of games coming up, we could do with, resting certain positions, or are you kind of, let's roll on, keep it going?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what are the sort of little niggly injuries that certain players might be carrying that sort of limit them playing 2 times a week. So there might be a little bit of that comes into it. And the other thing is as well, I was thinking that even though we've had squad rotations and big squads for quite a number of years now, we were quite late as a club to that way of doing things. Yeah. There's still that bit of a feeling when you see a team sheet that somebody's been dropped, and was Hannibal dropped and was Lucas Perez dropped? And they're not, are they? They as you've been saying yourself, Greaves, he's making decisions based on what's in front of him and what makes sense for that game. It's not like in the days when somebody was left out and you start thinking, is his days numbered now, or he must be really unhappy about it and so on. But having said that, there might be a part of him wants to, manage Hannibal's emotions a little bit, perhaps. He left him out for that one. Josh Lawrence coming and doing really well. Do you perhaps give Hannibal a look in this game against Hull? Keep him involved, and he's not been dropped. He's not been cast aside. But Lawrence played so well. I mean, we saw some things out of him that I didn't know he could do, based on what we got. We knew he was sort of solid guy who'd playing that 2 and in deeper 2 and play the simple ball and all that kind of stuff. But he was like showboating almost at some stage. It's like he was like really turning it on, like he was trying to prove a point a little bit. So, I'd be very tempted to keep it exactly the same, to be honest. But, maybe possibly that one, is Lawrence fitness at a level where he can go 3 games in a week? If it isn't, then maybe this one you tell Hannibal to go in and play a slightly different role. Brownhill's still going to play in front of you, but you're going to be working hard alongside the other Josh. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, but I would suspect we would feature the same starting 11 if everyone's fit.
Yeah, definitely. And would it, we have got players to still come back in. We were discussing that this morning at 5-a-side. It's, we've said it a few times, but, Trezor looks to be featuring a lot of the kind of training pictures, which suggests he's back to, or on his way back to full fitness, looks to be kind of smiling and enjoying things. We've obviously still got Aaron Ramsey, who's back on the grass. We've got Redmond, who Chris has mentioned a few times, could still play a part. These selection kind of decisions are going to get harder and harder, you'd expect, aren't they, for Scott Parker when he has another 3 attacking players in Ramsey, Trezor and Redmond as a minimum available to him.
Trezor's drone footage in training is looking exceptional so far. But it's like everybody said, you probably say yes, try and keep the same 11, barring niggles, injuries, etc. And the nice thing is, the more people who are coming off that training pitch remotely match fit, are going to start featuring, whether it be as subs or as starters. And as we move along, that's going to be utilised, and I'm quite confident that Scott Parker will be able to utilise them properly. But I mean, to Simon's point as well, I'm not messing about with this midfield again. I'd like to see them click a little bit more. It's not necessarily that they have to play 90 minutes. You'd probably be seeing the likes of Hannibal coming in, and if he has to come in on 60 minutes for somebody in the middle, so be it. But it's going to be a nice problem to have.
Yeah, definitely. Let's leave it there, chaps. We'll be back later in the week, hopefully celebrating another positive result on the road up at Hull. I'm sure the Burnley fans will be in fine voice again there. Being made to travel twice in just a few days, it doesn't seem to ever put us off. But yeah, we'll be back with the usual preview of the QPR game later in the week. Perhaps if we have a resounding win against Hull City, we might do a special kind of debrief for that. But enjoy the start of your week. Enjoy a trip to Hull and back. And we'll see you shortly. Until then, up the Clarets.